And the ultrasound tech looks at me and she goes, so do you know what you're having? I was like, yeah, the blood test said it was going to be a boy. She's like, oh, those things are never wrong. She puts the wand on my belly and she goes,
What does that mean?
She moves it again. She moves it again. She keeps moving this around and she goes, I'm not saying I've never been wrong, but I've been doing this for 24 years. And that is most definitely a girl.
I'm Kayla Heater, follower of Jesus, wife and mother of 6 children, Christian childbirth educator and doula, and your host of the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, where we share God-centered birth stories, evidence-based birth education, and our pursuit of surrendering our birth plans to God. Let's get started. Well, hey everyone. I hope your week is off to a great start. I'm recording this right after I got back from childbirth class tonight with my whole new group of students. I'm so excited. I love teaching this class. It's so much fun. We've got 5 couples in the class, and I even have another doula in training who's observing the class so she can get her doula certification. So it's just been a blast. Love it. If any of you missed that window to sign up for this class and you wanted to do an in-person class, our next in-person class won't be until August for those fall babies. But if you need a class before then, that is why we have our online class. I also do teach private classes if you prefer a private class that's catered to your own schedule and your own time, just one-on-one with us. Then we can totally do that. I come to your house, we do it on your schedule, and it's just you guys and me. That, of course, is a little more expensive than my regular in-person group class, but it is an option out there for you guys. But if not, I've got our online on-demand class for you that's accessible at any point. If nothing's just going to work out for your schedule and you just want to do it at your own pace in your pajamas on your bed, I totally understand that as well. That's why we created it. So it was an option. Do want to apologize if you can hear my sweet Bowie boy in the background. I'm recording this right when I got home from class, and I thought he might be asleep, but he wanted to stay up for me and nurse. So he's staring at me right now while I record this, and my husband is on a prayer call with somebody else right now, so he can't watch him. So we're just hanging out. So Bowie says hi if you hear him. Real quick, before we jump into this week's episode, I have to tell you guys what happened to me yesterday. So totally random. My daughter and I were going to the store. We were going to Walmart to get a few random things, Band-Aids, borax, that type of stuff. And I get out of the car and walk through the grass to get into the store, and I stepped on some kind of nail or screw or something that was completely hidden in the grass, camouflage, couldn't see it at all. It must have been sticking straight up because it went through the rubber sole of my shoe, through my sock, and went right into my foot. And I fell to the ground. It hurt so bad. I felt like, this is going to sound funny. I felt like Marv in Home Alone when he steps on those nails going up the stairs, except that I legit could not see it. My daughter and I even got down on our hands and knees and were searching for it in the grass because I didn't want that to happen to anybody else. And I could not find it, but it gashed my foot near my heel, the thick sole part of my foot. And it was bleeding, and I was like, well, good thing I'm at a store and getting Band-Aids, ironically enough. So I cleaned it out and everything and got it bandaged up. But oh my goodness, it hurts so much. I can hardly, I can't walk on it. I'm walking on my toe right now and not my heel to keep the pressure off of it because it hurts. So it was just so random. So I just felt like telling you guys that. I'm hobbling right now. Hopefully this time next week, I can report back to you and tell you that I can totally walk on my foot and I'm 100% fine. And I really hope that's the case because the weather, besides the next 2 days, the weather is supposed to be so beautiful. And I cannot wait to just go. I cannot wait to go on a bunch of walks. Sorry, Bowie just made a really big noise. Okay. I'm going to go ahead just for the sake of time and Bowie and jump into this week's episode. Remember, this week is part 2 of a 2-part story. So part 1 was last week and part 2 is this week. So if you haven't listened to last week's episode yet, I highly recommend going back and listening to that one first because it will give a lot more context to this episode. So let's go ahead and get into this week's episode. After having her first 2 babies in Tennessee, where home birth was more affordable, Lycie and her husband had since moved out to Northern California, where midwifery was not only way more expensive, but the midwives were also not in line with her faith in Jesus. This led her to feeling obligated to plan a hospital birth, something she never dreamed of doing. But this time around, she was committed to surrendering all of her birth plans to God. And she was pleasantly surprised that by putting her faith and trust in Him, He had planned a birth even better than she could imagine.
My youngest is a year old. I have a almost 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and we're like, should we try again? Should we not? And we're like, you know what? We really like the providers we have right now because we had a clinic that was not even really asking us if we wanted to vaccinate her kids. So I was like, and if I switch, I'm not going to have that. So we're going to stay with the insurance we have for this year. And then we'll plan on having a baby calendar year of 2026.
Oh,
So
I see that plan didn't work out.
no, it did not. It was not what I was initially planning. So we kept the insurance we had. We were very happy with this. I'm like, okay, we'll have a little bit of a larger age gap. I'll get some more time to breathe. We're all good. Then it's December, beginning of December. We've locked in our insurance choice for the year. And then it's our wedding anniversary, December 20. And I'm like, that temperature chart is not looking like a not pregnant woman. Like, that is very suspicious. So I looked at my husband. It's the day before our anniversary. I was like, so should I take the test today or tomorrow? He's like, just wait until tomorrow. So I'm 10 days past ovulation. It's our 4-year wedding anniversary. So I take the test and I come out of the bathroom. I was like, so what's your guess? He's like, you're pregnant, aren't you? It's like, yep, I'm very much pregnant. He's like, well, we can't change our insurance. That is just that's not what I want at my birth.
Yeah.
And we can't afford that anyway. But we also can't afford the $8,000 that the birth center charges out of pocket.
Right. Because now you're not with the insurance that would cover that.
So I am so mad at God because we went into that decision so prayerfully. So I take a hike on one of our local trails here. My husband's like, I'll take the kids, you take the dog, and you go for a little walk.
You calm down.
Exactly. So I was sitting there, I'm like tears streaming down my face. I'm like, God, I don't understand this. Like, why? This is not what I wanted. This is not my plan. Because I know that we were not supposed to change insurances this year. And so I was still very frustrated at God. I accepted at this point that I was probably not going to get my home birth. And I was not going to get even the consolation prize of a birth center birth.
Right.
I was going to go the standard OB route, and I was not excited. My husband reached out to one of his coworkers, and his coworker's like, well, my wife had 2 home births, and then after a tragic home birth, they ended up with their third having a hospital birth. So he gave us the name of the OB, and we ended up scheduling an appointment with her. And funny enough, her name was the exact same name as my midwife in Tennessee.
It kind of felt like a little bit of a sign.
I was like, okay, maybe this is a sign that this is supposed to be the one. And so they finally get me in at 11 weeks was my first appointment. And I've known since 10 DPO. So this one feels like an absolute lifetime.
Right.
My first appointment with my daughter was before I'd even missed my period. That is the downside to testing so early and knowing so early.
So you have to wait to see anyone for a very long time.
Exactly. Especially when it's not a midwife that's going to get you in right away and that you already know. So I'm waiting and waiting. And meanwhile, it's Christmas And my brother had flown out to spend Christmas with us. And we were trying to figure out what we were going to do. And he's like, oh, we could do this. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. And he looks at me, he's like, what do you mean you can't do that? The only reason you wouldn't be able to do that is if you're pregnant. And I look at him, he sees my face. He's like, wait, another one? You are? I was like, guilty. So my brother ended up being the first person to find out, other than my husband, my best friend, and I. Anyway, we tell our family a few days, like early in the new year, that we were pregnant and going to be having another one come late August, early September. And so I called my mom, and she was due the week of my mom's birthday. So I call up my mom and I was like, so I'm getting you a new birthday present this year and I'm already working on it. And she's like, oh, what is it? I'm like, I'm pregnant. She's like, oh, all my PTO is gone again, isn't it? I'm like, yep.
So does your mom do home births, or is she a hospital midwife or a birth center midwife? Like, what does she do?
So my mom's history, she worked as an L&D nurse for a long time, and she hated the way the hospital system ran. She worked L&D, NICU, and PICU, and she was not a fan. I was raised pretty crunchy.
Yeah.
She was actually going into labor with me when she was taking her entrance exam into midwifery school.
Okay.
So she then went to midwifery school, and when she graduated, so most of my childhood, she ran a home birth practice. And in the middle of everything that was going on with my home life, she stopped practicing out of home. And then when my dad was arrested, she had to find a job. And so she ended up working back in the hospital system. So that's where she's still working, is in the hospital system.
Okay. Was that hard for her?
It's very hard, especially because she's not an L&D. She's not working with moms, which is where she really wants to work. She's working just regular, using her regular nursing degree,
Okay, and not her midwifery degree.
which she hates.
Yeah, I bet. That's got to be hard. So you were pregnant with baby number 3, living out in California. Your insurance has basically forced you into a hospital birth with an OB. Then what happens?
So then I'm still very frustrated with God at this point. And I'm three months in. So it's March. And one of my friends is like, hey, we're thinking about trying soon. We were thinking about preconception counseling. Do you know if that birth center covers, or this insurance covers that birth center? I was like, yeah, I have so many friends that have used that birth center with that insurance. She's like, great. She calls up the birth center and they go, oh, at the beginning of this month, we stopped accepting that insurance.
Oh, that's why the Lord didn't have you switch over.
It was God's hand of protection, and I was too stubborn to know it at the time. And that's beginning of, I think, March. So we're like, wow, like if we changed insurance, we would have had to change all of our other providers and it still wouldn't have gotten us the birth center. So I was like, okay, God, I see that you have a plan here that I don't understand yet, but I was starting to trust him. So we go in and we get a blood test, and this blood test says that we're going to have a boy. And I was like, oh, I love this. I was the second girl, and I have 2 little brothers. So it's 2 girls, 2 boys. I was so excited about this because it was looking like we were going to have the exact same setup that I was born and raised in. I was really excited. And I was like, well, I've never had a boy. It's a very different experience for me. So I was really excited.
What blood test? Was it like an at-home one, or was it through your OB?
I asked my OB, and she's like, well, the only blood test we will offer is the NIPT, and that'll tell you if it's a boy or girl. And I was like, I know so many people that have had a false positive on an NIPT. I would rather not take an NIPT. So I was like, do you offer any of the other ones? And they're like, no, we don't do any of those. I was like, but like my last provider in Tennessee did one of those for me. And she's like, nope, we don't do that. And so I was very like, okay. She's like, oh, you should just do the at-home ones. They're just as accurate. Or not. So I do an at-home test and I send it in, and my sister-in-law is all excited because she wanted to plan a gender reveal for us. And so she plans a gender reveal and it gets lost in the mail.
Oh no.
It disappears. So I'm like, great. So we ended up calling the company, canceling that one, and then doing another one. So I take another blood test. It gets sent in. She gets the results, and so she plans this gender reveal, and it says, "Yay! It's gonna be a boy, right?" And so fast forward a month later, I have my 20-week ultrasound.
Mm-hmm.
And they won't let kids in. And my in laws were out of the country on a mission trip at the time. So the only option I have is either leave our kids with my husband's grandparents, and his grandpa had like just broken his arm.
Oh.
Like, maybe not. Or I could take my husband's grandma and my husband could babysit his grandpa and the girls. So we're like, oh, we'll do that. And Justin, he's like, I've seen enough ultrasounds. I don't need to see this one too. So he's like, they're not going to find anything. They're not going to see anything. So I go in with my husband's grandmother. And mind you, she is this little 5'2" lady with a heavy South African accent, sweetest woman on the planet. I adore her. And so the two of us go into this ultrasound. They call me back and we get in there. And the ultrasound tech looks at me and she goes, so do you know what you're having? I was like, yeah, the blood test said it was going to be a boy. She's like, oh, those things are never wrong. And she puts the wand on my belly and she goes immediately, she goes,
What does that mean?
and she just keeps, and she moves it again. She moves it again. She keeps moving this around. And she goes, maybe I'm just not looking at it right. That looks like a girl. And so I'm just sitting there and I'm exchanging looks with my husband's grandmother. And the two of us are just sitting there like, this is going to be wild if this is the case, because everybody knows it's a boy. So at the end of my appointment, she couldn't tell me that everything was good, but everything looks good. And she's like, but I'm going to tell you this. She's like, I'm not saying I've never been wrong, but I've been doing this for 24 years. And that is most definitely a girl. So I'm looking over at Granny and she's looking at me and the two of us are cracking up. Like no one's going to believe us. So I look at her and I'm like, could you turn that back on and get a couple images of down there? Because I've got to prove this to my mom and everybody else that thinks this is a boy. So she's like, sure. So she takes a couple more photos for me. And then we go home and I look at my husband. So I was like, yeah, everything looks good. I hand him the photos. So I was like, so do you see that? And he's like, yeah. It's like, well, that's a girl. He's like, what? It's like, but didn't the blood test? I was like, uh-huh. She's positive it's a girl. And so he's like, well, I guess I'm definitely going to be outnumbered then. We all just are laughing hysterically. And then we had the time of our lives calling everybody up and telling them, so
JK, not a boy.
Actually not a boy. The blood test was wrong.
Well, and I think with those blood tests, because this is the first time, yes, this pregnancy I currently have is the first time we ever did an at-home blood test. And I'm pretty sure, just based on research and stuff, that it can only be wrong in that way. Like it can only tell you you're having a boy when you're actually having a girl, but it doesn't, I don't think it's wrong the other way around. Like if it tells you you're having a girl, you're definitely having a girl because of the DNA and the fact that you're already a girl. And so like it would pick up if there was any boy. But did you guys do the sneak peek?
We did.
Okay. I remember like my daughter was doing it with me and she was like in the room and she was like, Mom, the directions say that you have to get all the boys like away because she was like, in case their DNA gets picked up on anything. And so she made it very apparent that all of the boys had to be out of the house and like out of the room. And we had to lock the door so that no male DNA could get anywhere near this blood test. And so we were like wearing gloves and like putting like alcohol strips on everything.
But apparently either somehow my husband's DNA got mixed in there somehow or
they got your test mixed up with somebody else's.
One thing I've heard is that if you've had a boy before, because their DNA does not all permanently leave you. So for every child that you have, some of their DNA will be with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of boys.
So maybe it be wrong the other way. I don't know.
She was holding on to hope though, because she saw that it said in the test, like if some male DNA accidentally gets, in the test somehow, that you might get like this false positive of a boy. And so even when we got the test result back that it said it was a boy, because I only have one girl and then the rest of them are boys. And she, of course, has wanted a sister for a decade. So she was like, after we got the news that it was a boy and the results came back, she's like, well, it could still be wrong. She's like, it could still, maybe it's just got it wrong and maybe actually it's a girl. And so then when we had the anatomy scan at 20 weeks and there was 100% a penis on it, she was like, okay, like, I guess it really is a boy.
She's the princess of the castle.
Yeah, that's what we call her, the queen of the brothers. So,
And she's your oldest, right?
yeah, she's the oldest.
Poor thing.
But she does really great. Her and I try to spend some special girl one-on-one time together since there is no sister for her to do that with. Wait, so did you have your gender reveal party before or after?
Before.
So the party said like, hey, it's a boy, and everyone celebrated. That's
Yeah.
really funny.
And again, we don't have many friends that are our age. Most of my friends are like 15 years older than me that have kids. So like all of them are super excited that, oh, it's the first boy in the group. And then we're calling all of them up like, no, never mind, it's another girl. And I have one friend in particular, she's one of two girls, and she's like, no, Justin should just be a girl dad. He should only have girls. So what I told her, she was like ecstatic.
So
like,
happy
yes.
about it.
She's
That's
like,
funny.
yes, he needed another daughter. Anyway, so yeah, we have that test and we're like, oh, well, okay, we're having another girl then. So we're still very excited that it's a girl.
That's good, because you could have been like in tears and like sobbing and super upset, which would have been a perfectly reasonable response as well.
I was a little like, are we sure that this is right? But I wasn't mad about it because I knew that God would give us what we needed and not necessarily what we wanted. I'd gotten that far in my relationship and trusting him that I wasn't going to get what I wanted, but I was going to get what I needed.
That's good.
So anyway, we go back then. I'm 26 weeks and we go back to visit my mom, and she puts the Doppler on my belly. And she's like, oh, heartbeat's 145. And then she moves it to the other side of my belly. She's like, it's 163 over here. I was like, excuse you? She's like, have you ruled out twins? I was like, Mom, do not put that thought in my head. Don't you? I'm like, there's no twins anywhere in our family. She's like, well, they're still identical twins. It's like, Mom, stop. So she plants this doubt in my head. And mind you, I'm already massive because I start showing around 8 weeks.
Mm,
And that's when I start getting questions.
yeah. But you just had an anatomy scan. They would have most likely found a second baby at that scan.
So I'm like, well, chances are no. But that lingering thought did stay in my mind for the rest of my pregnancy. So I get to the end of my pregnancy, and the OB I had, she was okay. I was really mourning the loss of the relationship you have with the midwife, and like
Mhm.
being able to just call them, text them, and just having a camaraderie and knowing each other. And she's wants all of like an extra set of STD tests in the middle of my pregnancy because that's what they do. And I'm like, listen, I don't need them. I promise you, don't need them. And she's like, well, we still recommend them. I'm like, well, I'm not getting them because you've already tested me once and I promise you I don't need them. She's like, okay, fine. But then she also starts talking, well, you should be worried about shoulder dystocia because you have a history of big babies. Even though your gestational diabetes test came back negative, we still are worried about a big baby because you have a history. So every appointment, she's talking about how worried she is about having shoulder dystocia. And I'm sitting there like, man, I want to get to the hospital like when I am pushing. Because I don't want this fear around me in birth.
Right.
So that kind of becomes my plan. Like, I want to leave when I hit transition. But it's also from my house to the hospital is also a half-hour drive because I live pretty far out in the country, out of the city. So it's a half-hour drive into the hospital. But my longest pushing stage was 20 minutes. So like, oh, we'll try and call it as close as we can. But I'm like, well, my mom should be here. She can do a check and make sure that I'm like ready when I go in. So that kind of becomes our plan is like stay at home until I am about to push a baby out. Maybe have a car birth. I joked that like I wouldn't mind a car birth
Over hospital birth? Yeah.
over a hospital birth. I'm like, I would not mind it. So my pregnancy progresses, everything's going good. My GPS test at 36 weeks is negative. And at this point, I have convinced myself of a couple of things. One, I'm probably going to go over my due date. Two, when I go into labor, it's going to be a long labor again. And three, I started praying, Lord, your will be done, not mine. I want the people that you want at my birth. I want the place to be where you want me to have this baby. I want everything to be your will and not mine. So I started praying over everybody that would be there during my birth, everybody that would be there postpartum. I really, really wanted it to be God's will this time. I got to that point where I was like, Lord, you have a better plan. You've already shown me that through this pregnancy. There was so many times where he was just teaching me like, I have a better plan than you could even imagine. And so I was like, okay, God, let's have this be your will this time. So my mom flies out the day before her birthday. It is August 27. Her birthday is the 28th. And her birthday also happens to be my husband's grandfather's birthday. So both of them share a birthday. And so we take them out to eat. And I'd lost my mucus plug that morning. So I'm super excited. And I'm like, well, maybe I'm going to give him a birthday twin. And then, like, I start getting contractions, but they're pretty sporadic. And it ends up being prodromal labor. So I'm a little frustrated and sad. I'm like, oh, I don't want my mom to be sitting out here for weeks on end like she did with my first. And I would like to meet this baby. So I started trying to hold that in again. And instead of letting God's will be done. And I get to this point, it's Saturday. No, it's Sunday afternoon. It's August 31st. I'm like, God, I really wanted to have this baby. So I started praying again. And then I started writing Bible verses all over our mirrors, all over windows, just to remind me while I was in labor that God is the one in control and it's not me. So I started surrendering that back to Him. And I'm like, okay, God, your will, not mine. And I woke up at 1 a.m. and I had to go pee. And I was like, that's a little weird. I normally don't need to go pee this early. So it is Labor Day morning. And I go pee and I wipe and I've got bloody show. And I'm like, oh, maybe I'll be in labor today. But I wasn't like, I was a little excited, but I wasn't holding on to any hope at this point because I'm like, no, I've done this before. We don't want to redo this. So I then go back to bed and I try to sleep. And about 15 minutes later, I get my first contraction. I'm like, oh no, it's back labor.
Hmm.
Oh, like, no. It's still mild, but it's definitely all in my back. I'm like, not again. So I try to sleep for about 2 hours. And after about 2 hours, my husband rolled over enough in his sleep. I didn't feel bad about waking him up, but I like poke him. I'm like, honey. He's like, what? I'm like, I'm in labor. He's like, great. I'm going back to sleep.
He's like, it's going to be another 24 hours, so I'm going to get some sleep.
Exactly. So that's what is running through all of our minds. And so he tries to go back to sleep. And I'm like, well, I can't go to sleep. So I'm going to clean the house. So I get out of bed and I just start tidying up my house, cleaning the house. I'm washing the dishes. My contractions are every 15 minutes pretty consistently, but it's definitely all in my back. So I clean the house as much as I can. And then I'm like, oh, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. So I'm like, no, I'll try and go back to sleep. So I crawl back into bed. He's like, I'm so glad you're back. I couldn't sleep. Like, now that you're back, I'll be able to sleep. It's like, okay, good. So I go back to sleep for, I think, another hour or so. And my contractions are about every 10 or so minutes. So I try to sleep. I sleep between contractions, wake up for the contraction. And then after an hour, I'm like, this is more painful laying down than it would be if I got up. So I get in my mind that the breakfast I want is crepes. That's what I want. So I get up And I grab some grain, I throw it in my mill, I start milling the flour. And then my husband looks at me because he also got up at this point. It's about 5:30 in the morning. And he looks at me, he goes, "Did you try the mile circuit?" I was like, "Oh, I don't want to." It's like, "Well, just try it." So I start doing the mile circuit and I'm like, this is so uncomfortable. Why? And so I'm like, forget it. I'll just deal with back labor. I don't want to deal with this. So I've milled the grain at this point, but then I made the mistake of sitting down in my office chair. And unlike my last two labors, where all I wanted to do was move and crawl into my birth sling or be on the birth ball, I sat down in this office chair and I was like, oh, this is so comfortable. I'm not moving. So I sat down, go through several contractions in the office chair, and he's like, You don't want to stand up? What's wrong with you?" It's like, "No, this is very comfortable. I'm going to stay here." He's like, "Okay." And about 7 o'clock, my mom walks in the door because at this point, go back, I'd had him call my one childhood friend who, ironically, we grew up in the same neighborhood in Michigan, both lived in that same town in Tennessee. And then she just moved back here to California because she married one of my husband's childhood friends.
Whoa, that's really cool.
It's amazing. And she's literally my oldest friend. I've known her my whole life.
If this podcast has been with you through pregnancy, labor, or those quiet postpartum moments, and it's helped you feel more confident, grounded, or less alone, I want to share something new. You can now support the show with a small monthly donation or a one-time gift. Your support helps keep these conversations going and makes this resource available to parents who really need it. If this show has supported you in this season of life, I'd be so grateful if you'd consider supporting it back. Visit the show notes to find the link to donate. I truly thank you for being a part of the Surrendered Birth community.
So I'd invited her to be at this birth. But she lives 2 hours from me. So I call her up or Justin texts her actually, and he goes, "Hey, she's in labor." And so she grabs her dog, her husband, and furiously jumps in the car and drives like a mad woman to get to me. She's like, "I'm not missing this birth." That's around 5:30 when my husband called or texts her. And he also texts my sister-in-law because she has also moved back to California at this point. So she lives about 10 minutes from me. And so he texts her, but she is notorious for sleeping through things and not getting up early in the morning. And she's also a night shift nurse. So she's like exhausted in the mornings anyway, but she'd been off for a few days at this point. So he texts her, she doesn't respond. And my mom shows up at 7 o'clock. My mother-in-law shows up also at about 7 o'clock. So both of them get here around that time. And my mom walks in the door and I look at her and I go, "Mom, can you make the crepes?" Because I just had this one check lined. That's all I wanted was my crepes. And she's like, "Are you sure that's what you want to eat?" I was like, "Yes, that's what I want." She's like, "Okay, I'll make you crepes." My contractions are like probably 8 minutes apart. So they're still pretty spaced out. And my mother-in-law walks in and she gathers up my girls because she was going to take them for the birth. And so they came over to me. They said bye. I was like, "Oh, bye, girls. Have fun. Enjoy time with Omi." And so they go out the door. And by the time they leave, it's probably 7:30. And then I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, my sister-in-law is not here and my husband hasn't said anything. So it's like, "Justin, did Chantel respond?" He goes, no." He's like, "I texted her." I was like, "She's still asleep, right?" So I called her and I was like, "Hey, Chantel." And she's like, "Yeah." I was like, "I'm in labor." She's like, "Oh, okay. I'm on my way over." So she's thinking, because she's been at both of my last births, she's like, "Oh, she's got time." So she gets in the shower, she takes her time. I called her at like 7:50, and at about 8:20, around this time, my husband started doing ice on my back and counter pressure. So he starts doing counter pressure, and I'm still sitting in the office chair.
You love that office chair.
I've been sitting since like 5:30. So I am enjoying my office chair. It's like 8:20 now. So I've been in the office chair for a few hours, just going through my contractions. And my mom looks at me like in the midst between like flipping the crepes over. She's like, "You need to get out of that thing." And I was like, "No." Mm-mm. And around this time, my sister-in-law got there about 5 minutes after my friend that was 2 hours away. They both get there. So they're sitting down eating their crepes. My husband comes over, he's eating crepes, and my mom's looking at me going, "No, get out of the chair now." And I'm like, "Mm-mm, mm-mm, nope, I'm not getting out of the chair." And my mom looks at me, she's like, "Get out of the chair now."
At least to go to the bathroom. Like, I'm thinking at least go empty your bladder.
Well, I was just so comfortable. I didn't feel like I needed to pee at this point at all. I peed a couple of times in the night, but I just didn't feel like I needed to pee. Around this time too, I looked over and I was like, "Forget the crepes, give me a cheese stick." I felt like I was going to throw up if I didn't get something in my stomach immediately. And so my husband looks at me and just laughs. He's like, "No crepes?" I was like, "Forget the crepe. I just want a cheese stick." So I was like, "Okay, fine." So he goes, he grabs me a cheese stick and some coconut water. I sip on that, and I'm just hitting active labor at this point. So my contractions are still 4.5 minutes apart. And so it's 8:20 in the morning. And I head over to my birth ball. I sit there for one contraction. I'm like, "This is not comfortable. I do not like this. I'm gonna go over to my birth sling." So I have a birth sling hanging over the door, and I crawl in that. I'm like, "Oh, this is so comfortable." And I go through that. It's sitting there for two contractions. And then on the third contraction, my dog walks into the room, hears me moaning as I start this contraction. At this point, my husband has left his duty doing counter pressure to grab a crepe. And so everybody else is eating. And my dog just comes up behind me as I get this contraction, licks my ear, and then yelps straight into it. And I had no idea she was there. So I go from like the deep low moaning to like wildly screaming through the rest of that contraction. And I was like, "That was not what I was expecting. Thank you very much." But right before she walked up to me, I had this thought in my head and I was like, "Lord, like, as soon as I just release this to you, God, I'm going to have this baby." And then she yelped in my ear and I start screaming. I'm like, "Okay, I'm so done." It's like, "Okay, God, surrender again." So then I surrender it back to him again. And I'm like, "Man, I have to go pee." I stand up, walk into the bathroom, and try and go pee. And there's nothing coming out. And I'm like, "I need to go pee, but I can't go pee." So my husband was in there with me. And I'm like, "You know what? I'm ready for the water now. I'd like some water. Like, we don't have a birth pool this time, but how about you turn on the shower?" So he reaches over to turn on the shower, and I get this massive contraction. I'm like, "Forget the shower. Come here right now." So I reach my arms around him, like around his neck, and my water explodes all over the bathroom. And I go from feeling like I need to pee to actively pushing. And I had no idea I was pushing, but at this point, my body is pushing for me. So everybody drops their crepes. It's 7:50 something in the morning. So or 8:50 at this point. And so they all hear my moaning change and come running into the bathroom. And it's a tiny itsy bitsy little bathroom. And so my mom reaches down. She goes, "Lycie, you're crowning. We're having the baby here." And I was like, "What do you mean I'm having the baby here? I've only been in active labor for like 30, 40 minutes max. There's no way I'm having the baby here. This is like, there's no way." And my mom's like, "Honey, you're having the baby here." So I'm trying to process this. My contraction at this point has abated. So I'm sitting back on the toilet trying to process this. And my mom goes, "Lycie, do you have Chuck's pads? Do you have gloves?" So I'm like pointing out where everything is in my house because my contractions are still 4.5 minutes apart.
Yeah.
they never got closer than that. So in this like 4 or 5 minute gap, everybody's running around frantically. So my friend ends up jumping into our bathtub. My mom sits on the edge of the bathtub. I'm sitting on the toilet. My husband's standing in front of me, and my sister-in-law is standing in the doorway. So there was five of us all crammed in this like, I don't know, 20 square foot space. And I'm still trying to digest the fact that I'm going to give birth at home accidentally, even though I kind of wished but never thought I was going to have a home birth this time. So, in the next contraction, I give one push and she flies out. It was less than 2 minutes of pushing. She just falls out of me and she is blue. She is not breathing. So, at this point, my mom's doing stimulation and I reached down kind of instinctually and just sucked out all of her airways with my mouth and then spit it out. And then I brought her up to my chest. And all this takes about a minute and a half. And then she starts crying. And it was this just like feeling of like everybody around me was super stressed. But because I just completely surrendered it to God at that point, I wasn't worried. It was a surreal peace that even I didn't quite understand in the moment. So I bring her up to my chest and she starts crying and everybody's like, she's fine, she's good. And well, my mom's like, well, now we've got to wrap you up and take you to the hospital. We're all just sitting there, all trying to digest it. And I'm looking down into my arms like, she's here already. I've only been in labor for a few hours.
Right.
So my whole labor from that first 15-minute contraction was just shy of 7 hours.
Yeah, but really it was like you said, like you had only been in active labor for 30 or 40 minutes. So it was really less than an hour of that like true active labor. Yeah.
I'm standing there just stunned, like, how? Especially after my last labor being 27 hours with over 8 or 9 hours of active labor.
So you're sitting on the toilet and you're holding your baby and everything's good. Do you decide, I mean, your mom's a CNM. Like, do you decide to deliver the placenta there at the house?
Yes. So, like I said, I'm half an hour from the nearest hospital. Anyway, at this point, my mom looks at me. She goes, well, you do have a second-degree tear again.
You and your tears. Oh.
Yeah, I have never had a postpartum without a tear, but this one was like barely a second degree. So she's like, however, I don't have anything to stitch you up. So
Right. She doesn't have any equipment with her.
exactly. And the only thing she had was a Doppler. So she looked at her heart tones, no, probably like around the time she got there, around 7 a.m. And then when I was like crowning, she tried to get them again and there was nothing. So that was the only thing she did during my labor. I don't even have a picture during my labor because I thought I had hours. Lucky for me, though, my sister-in-law did turn on my phone and start recording during her actual birth. But
Oh,
so
that's
yeah,
good.
my mom delivers my placenta, and it came like I don't know, 10 minutes, not even 10 minutes after she was born. It just came out. So they deliver that, and then they wrapped her up in a towel to keep her warm, and then wrapped up the placenta in my lap. So it took about half an hour from when she was born to us getting into my car. So we load everybody into the car, and all of us are just in shock that she's here and I'm not still in labor.
Right.
We get in the car and drive down to the hospital, and I show up. They pull me out of the wheelchair and they wheel me into the hospital, and it's not my doctor on call. It's a completely different doctor, but he was super nice. Like the best hospital experience I've ever had by far. Or even of any of my friends. It was just a phenomenal experience. He sews me up. The nurses put her on the scale and they go, so guess what? She's 10 pounds even.
No.
And I'm like, wait, I just pushed a 10-pound baby out in 2 minutes?
It can be done.
She's 10 pounds. And they're like, wow, she's still warm. Most of the babies, the home birth babies we get are freezing. But anyway, so yeah, that experience was great. He stitched me up. He's like, I just want to make sure you're nice and numb, so you're not feeling any of this. Just so, so sweet. All the nurses were phenomenal, and they moved me to the postpartum room. It's great. One of my good friends works in the ER in the same hospital, so she came to visit us. And yeah, it was a really, really sweet experience, especially compared to my first postpartum hospital experience.
Right, which was horrific. So did you decide then to just go home since like you already did pretty much everything you needed to do, or did you decide to stay since that was your original plan to have her in the hospital?
So our plan was to get leave as soon as we could, but we decided to stay so we could get like the newborn screening done and all of that so we wouldn't have to come back. So
Okay.
that did not sound pleasant to me. Like there was no hemorrhaging, so I was completely stable and doing fine. She was completely stable, doing fine. Latched like a pro, so we're doing great. But we just decided we'll stay here for the 24 hours until she can get all the testing done, and then we'll head home. So she got all the newborn screening, the hearing test, all of that, and we headed home at 24 hours. Although again, like the first time, they forgot about us to discharge us.
Oh, well, a discharge, they always say, like, oh, yeah, you'll be discharged by like 11 a.m. And then it's like 5 p.m. and you're still there.
Yep, that's exactly what it was again. So they finally remembered to discharge us. We're like, yay, we're freed. We headed home. And it was just a really smooth transition. This time, like we were completely like I'm not new here anymore. I've been here for 2 years. So I had a really not just a strong community around me, but like a very caring community. So they're bringing meals over, and I again have a massive overproduction. So I'm still pumping about 48 ounces a day. And she's not quite, she'll be 8 weeks old on Monday. And I've pumped around 2,000 ounces, a little over 2,000 ounces.
Gosh, do you feel like the pumping makes you continue to produce? Like it's cyclical.
Yeah, it probably contributes to it at this point. But the problem is, if I don't pump, then I wake up both in a puddle with at least one clogged duct. So then I'm going through like pain. If I'm going to like wean it down, I have to do it really slowly.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll end up with mastitis, clogged ducts, and it's just miserable. Um, and I've been donating it. So I've found like I've donated to like 4 or 5 moms that can't produce. So at that point, I'm like, I feel nice because I'm helping someone.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I've been doing with my massive oversupply.
Supplying everybody else's babies with milk.
Because my body's like, I thought you had triplets, so that's what I'm gonna make. So yeah, this postpartum has by far been the smoothest. It's been really like I don't want to say easy, but my labor also kind of felt easy because I never got to that point where I felt like I couldn't do it. I never got to that point where I even thought I was anywhere near having a baby. If there wasn't back labor, like I never hit labor land. If I didn't have back labor, I don't think I would have even realized I was in labor.
Yeah.
It wasn't that bad. So yeah, it was just so smooth. And then I had friends that were like, "Oh, we'll bring you lunch. We'll bring you food," and that was just so sweet. And I also actually prepared this time and had like a month's worth of freezer meals that I'm still working off of.
Oh, that's great.
So, which that plus the meals that our friends were bringing us, and then my mom ended up staying for a whole 3 weeks after she was born.
Wow, that's awesome.
It was just a really gentle entrance into having being outnumbered this time. Having 3, and my eldest is obsessed with babies. My middle, she's a little bit on the like I've been replaced, but
Yeah.
she still is also obsessed with her. And we ended up naming her Tessa. So her name means reaper of God's promises.
Mm.
And so, because We're like, well, we've named the last two with names that have a meaning to them. I want the same thing, which kind of was a relief to me because trying to find a boy's name was very challenging.
I agree. I have so many girls' names that I would love to be able to use, but every time we find out it's a boy, I'm like, and the hunt continues for another boy name.
Yeah, especially when I was like, because I love like classic names, not super common names, but also like, but I want it to mean something nice. So trying to find
Yeah.
that combination is very challenging.
Yeah.
And with a boy, I'd look up a name. I'm like, oh, I really like this name. And then it means like strong willed warrior. And I'm like, the last thing I need is a child that means strong willed. I've got enough of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a serious challenge for me. And then you also find like names that, like, I always loved the name Cassandra. And then I looked up the meaning and it means she who entangles men. I'm like, no, thank you. So, but yeah, that's been my postpartum so far. The only really crazy thing I've done this postpartum is I had my wisdom teeth out a week ago.
Oof. Wow. That's kind of random and late.
Yeah, it was like we went into the dentist because during her pregnancy, I didn't mention this, but one of my teeth had been like super, super sore. And I used some herbs to help tame that because I hate taking pain medications. So we're like, yeah, we should probably go into the dentist. And so one of the dentists that saw us is a good friend of ours. He goes, you need your wisdom teeth taken out. I was like, I know. I've been avoiding that for a long time. He's like, well, I'll take them out. How about tomorrow? For like
Oh
2 days.
man.
So I was like, okay, sure, Eugene, you can take him out. So he ended up taking him out. And I don't know what he did differently than a normal, like, but I didn't take pain meds after it. I didn't feel like I needed it. So I haven't had any kind of pain medication since taking them out. And my husband's like, I was on coated Tylenol. What in the world?
Mm-hmm. I got him out when I was like 17, but I remember I was on some stuff for sure.
Yeah, it ended up working out really, really well. But that has been her postpartum so far. It's been really a dream. Like, one of the other things that I've done differently this time, though, is anytime you get those intrusive thoughts that you get postpartum, like the first time I had them when I was after I had her, it was like terrifying. I was like, where did that thought come from? But instead of like dwelling on like, man, I must be a terrible person, which I really did with my first two. I've been like, that thought is not mine. That is straight from the devil. And I'm not gonna think about it. I'm not gonna dwell on it. And that changing that mindset and the way I respond to even those thoughts has also helped my postpartum just be so happy and so filled with God instead of dwelling on that kind of the intrusive thoughts. And also it's diminished them because I only had a few of them.
That's powerful. That happens to a lot of women postpartum, especially in the evenings as the sun goes down and it gets dark. That's when all those thoughts usually come racing in. So I'm glad you were able to recognize them for what they were and look to the Lord instead in his truth.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, then you've mentioned several things throughout your stories about having to let go of control, having to surrender things over to the Lord over and over again and whatnot. But is there anything else you want to share in terms of like, what do you feel like the Lord taught you through these experiences, or just any advice that you might have for other parents out there?
So the biggest thing I think God has taught me, it is surrender, which your podcast is very aptly named. But I learned with my first is that I didn't know anything, and two, that surrender is truly one of the things that I think God is trying to teach us in labor and in pregnancy because you have so little control. And I think God made pregnancy and labor specifically to be a teaching experience. We're not supposed to get everything the way we want it, when we want it, how we want it. I truly believe like God uses labor and pregnancy to teach us that his will is ultimate. His will is the best for us. So that's really the heart of it, is that once we surrender to God, he really has the best for us. He has the best plan. He has best um the best direction for our lives, that we could never even begin to imagine how good his plans are for us. Like, there's so many things that he's taught me, but that's really the key of it, is once you surrender your will to God and you allow him in the driver's seat, he can give you something that you couldn't have even imagined. Like, I would have had no idea if I was trying to pray for the birth I was I wanted. I would have had no idea how much better his plan was. His plan was better than the birth center. It was definitely better than the hospital that I thought I was going to get. I still got my home birth. Not quite a free birth because I still had a midwife there.
Right. Your mom was still there.
Yes. But I got another home birth, which is what I so dearly wanted. And it was only because I surrendered it to him. And it was all his way instead of my way. And it was so much better.
Yes, a lesson I've had to. I mean, that's why this podcast is named what it's named, because it was, I feel like, the number one lesson the Lord was trying to teach me through labor specifically. And it took a solid 4 labors for that to even start to stick. But it's something I have to, and then I wavered again in my 5th. So it was like, that's what I told my husband this time going into this one. I was like, babe, I am surrendering from day 1. I don't know what this birth is going to hold. I'm sure it will be another boy, even though we want a girl. Like, I'm like, it will be fine. It's going to be great. I'm just going to surrender and have so much more peace in the process.
Yeah, that's my husband. When I started getting antsy right before she was born, and I was so frustrated that she didn't decide to come on my mom's birthday, he looked at me, he's like, have you surrendered that to God? I was like, I had. He's like, you need to sit down and talk to God. He's really good at grounding me. He's very, very good at going, no, you're fighting this, and you need to talk to God. And that's what he did. He pointed me right back to God. And it was that moment when I fully surrendered, and I just was like, okay, God, I want your will. But she did finally come. And then her birth was just beautiful. It was crazy in the best way.
I love that. Thank you for taking your time to come and share these stories and being willing to share and be so transparent and open. I really appreciate it.
You are welcome.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. You can reach me at Surrendered Birth Services on Instagram, or email me at contact@surrenderedbirthservices.com. Be sure not to miss an episode by hitting the follow button. Also, we'd love for you to leave a written review of the show so that more people's births and lives can be changed by the love of Jesus and the empowerment of accurate birth education. If you really enjoyed this episode in particular, please take a screenshot of it and post it to your Instagram story, tagging Surrendered Birth Services. If you would like to be a guest on the Surrendered Birth Stories podcast, please click the link in the episode show notes to fill out your interest form. Also, if you're interested in taking my childbirth classes, birth consultations, or having me as your birth doula, please click on the link in the show notes to take you to my website for online and in-person options. Just as a reminder, this show is not giving medical advice, so please continue to see your personal care provider as needs arise. We hope you have a great week, and remember, learn all that you can, make the best plans, and then leave it in God's hands. I would love to just see a picture of your 30-pound 9-month-old at some point.
I'll find some of those photos, because we'd had, like, I remember one time we were going into like Walmart of all places, and this lady just pops out of her car with this deep Southern accent. She goes, "That is the fattest baby I've ever seen." It was voice.